I'm going to introduce our guests. And I have to say, I'm particularly excited about this webinar because people are always asking us, how can we get this started? This sounds so great. I want my kids to have more opportunities to play. I don't know how to get my school on board. And I'm very anxious to hear what these ladies have done to make it happen. So lady number one is Laura Haver. Laura is a mom, play advocate, author, speaker, and life design coach. She's an expert in play, happiness, and communication, and has helped thousands of women and families to experience more fun, fulfillment, and joy in their lives. Well, who can argue with that? Laura has been featured on the Today Show, CBS, Fox, and more, and her upcoming book, Play Together, Games and Activities for the Whole Family to Boost Creativity, Connection, and Mindfulness, launches early this year. So it's coming right up. She also founded and leads the Author Moms community. And when I'm putting this all back on Andrea again, but after the seminar by which I mean Andrea, sends out an email to everybody who's been here and also the people who signed up who aren't on right now live. And it will include all sorts of links to Laura and her book and her Instagram and you name it. So welcome, Laura. You can actually come on and we can see you if you want. And I'm going to also introduce Courtney, and then we'll go back to Laura to start our conversation. But Courtney, woo, she's coming. Courtney is the mother of two boys. There she is. And you can actually see them. There's a picture of her kids above her that you can't see here, but she's the mom. There they are. Okay, two boys and a bonus daughter in Acton, Massachusetts. This is so cool. She grew up in the same town as both of her parents, but she's watching her children experience a very different childhood, I'll bet, with increased academic pressure and decreased opportunity for spontaneous play. After watching Chasing Childhood, which we'll also give you a link to, it's this fabulous documentary on how childhood has changed. After watching Chasing Childhood this past spring, she was inspired to advocate for change in her community, which is what we hope for everybody who watches that movie or comes to one of our webinars. So thank you, ladies. And happy you're here. Happy we have real world moms who are making real world change. And Laura, let's start with you. I want to just lay out for us your inspiration when it comes to play and how you got it happening in the real world in your kids' school, because it's hard. Let's hear it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for putting this together. Let Grow is such an amazing organization. And I'm constantly inspired as a mom to keep reaching out and letting my kids have more independence. So thank you. And thank you for everyone who's listening and joining and listening to the replay later. It means so much to me that you guys are taking time out of your lives to focus on play and bringing play to kids, providing these opportunities for growth. And I could go on about that, but we got to get to the good stuff about the Play Club. So when I was reflecting on my own story, I was just a really naturally playful child. And I loved being able to do that. My nickname was Play Maloney, my maiden name. And I started off in my career as a coach. So I was teaching kids, I was working with kids. And I learned firsthand right away how kids learn through play. We had this game, it was called Ketchup and Mustard. I won't get into all the details, but if the kids made the shot on the tennis court, they yelled out ketchup. If they missed it, they yelled mustard. They thought it was the best game of their life. I thought it was kind of crazy. Basically, they were just hitting running forehands. And so I learned right away teaching through play was such a big deal. So fast forward, I become a mom. And here I am with my own boys. I have two kids, 8 and 10. And I remember being like, okay, I want them to go outside and play. And I'd be like, all right, guys, let's go. Go ahead. We're home. Go play. And they would be like, okay, like they would play a little bit, but then they weren't playing outside as much as I wanted them to. I don't know if anyone wants to relate to that in the chat. Maybe you have the same experience. And I remember feeling like, oh, is our yard not big? Like, what's going on? Is like, am I doing something wrong? What's going on? And I had the good fortune of being connected with Ginny Urich from 1000 Hours Outside. And, I spoke with her a long time ago, and it was 2019. And I remember listening to an early podcast episode with Dr. Peter Gray as the guest from Let Grow. And I had this aha moment. He said, kids want to be with other kids. They all want to be with other kids to play outside. And I thought, yeah, when my kids have friends over, they're totally happy to go play outside. But when they don't, suddenly it's like, all these things. So I'm like, how can I encourage that? So I started my own play club at a park. And I started that, I think, that was like right around when COVID hit. So then it was like, you couldn't do anything anyways. which is another story for a different day of like how my book came to life with playing at home and playing together. But then I had this amazing opportunity to be on a Chasing Childhood screening on the panel with Dr. Gray. And that's when he introduced me to Lenore, and I got to learn you can bring Play Club to schools. And so at that moment in 2021, I said, I'm bringing it to my kids' school. I already had built this community at the park, and so we can bring it into school. And then, it just took a while because of all the situation, right? Because for a while, our school was closed to outdoor extracurricular activities. Like all of 2021, there was no extracurricular activities going on at school. So I was taking the time, I was introducing it, I was being of service to the school. I was making relationships with teachers, and I was planting these little seeds and going through the system. So the nuts and bolts of how it worked was I had to reach out to people, right? So in 2021, I actually led Global School Play Day at our school, which is a really cool event. And so I got to introduce myself to we had a new principal as well, right? So everyone knows that's like a whole new relationship to be built. And then we got a whole new vice principal. So suddenly, I had to meet all these people. And so I just was offering my service. Like, how can I be of service? How can I show you guys the importance of play? What can I do? Volunteering with the teachers in the classrooms. And at the end of last year, I got to meet with some teachers. The principal, basically, I was emailing her, talking to her in person. She says, go meet with these two teachers. So I met with these two teachers, and they were busy. These teachers were already really busy. So as much as they wanted to champion play and they believed in Play Club, they didn't have the bandwidth. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to keep checking in with them and see what happens. And then early this year, my son's 5th grade teacher offered to host it in her classroom, which I forgot to add the other detail. I've been working with the district because I'm in California. We have, depending on where you are, every school has different laws and regulations. We have a lot. And I really ideally wanted it to be outside. I was sort of attached to that, maybe a little bit too long. So that's definitely a tip I have for parents, is just be open, right? We had been outside, and I love that they get to run around. With my background in athletics, I love that they could do that. And so finally she said, why don't we do it in my classroom? And I said, yes. I just said yes. And I said, I'm going to make it work however I can. And we could start small. So we started small with about 10 kids, and then we keep adding kids, and we do it in the classroom. And, I have to admit, like I said, I was really wanting to do it outside, let them running around, get all that movement. But in the classroom, it has been really beautiful. Like the kids play, we have these different materials, different open-ended play materials that I could bring in, like blocks, magnet tiles, all these different like little things I can either bring from home or the kids can bring in, use their own creativity. And we had Play Club last night, and I just sat there, because then I kind of have to like sit way back and try not to be in their space, right? That was a big part of the Play Club at the park, was educating the other parents. Don't run up to them on the swings when they're having it, but no. So wherever you do it, right, creating that space for the kids to lead, right? Let go and let grow. And so, I put it in the classroom. I started small. I built the relationships. Just yesterday, I was walking up the stairs with all these materials, and the kids in the other classroom was like, are you bringing those to our classroom? Come over here. They're like, what is that? I'm like, that's Play Club. And so now I know that I'm setting this opportunity for it to expand. I already have other parents who are interested in helping. Other teachers could be on board. And so I think the best and the easiest, even for you, like for me, is to start small and to just keep going one step. I mean, I asked the teacher yesterday, I said, what would you recommend? I said, I'm going to be on this webinar tomorrow. What do you recommend from a teacher's perspective? And she said, definitely to start small, which I laughed because I said, that's the first thing on my list. And then I laughed because that's the first thing I work with all my clients with: start small in anything and celebrate whatever steps along the way. And she said, we do it right after class, and we do it in the classroom. She said that if teachers really like that, if I can come in and I'm the one in charge, with her being there, I don't have to be legally covered, right? So that's the piece for the legality of it. She's there, so she's the main person, even though I'm cleared to work with kids and I have all the background, for everybody else, you're there manning it. They're just sitting at their desks doing what they're going to be doing anyways. So you can make it easy on them. The easier you can make it on them, the more likely they are to say yes. And then, of course, I explained to her that we clean up after ourselves. Like, I think teachers are concerned that kids are going to come in and they're going to make a tornado and leave their classroom a mess. And obviously they don't want more work. So taking as much off their plate as you can. And she also really loved the pledge, which I'm looking at, Lenore, the Let Grow pledge where the parents sign off and the kids sign off, which is a big deal. And let me make sure I didn't miss anything. She said she likes having stations and different materials, which you can do that however you want. We can still advocate for how we want Play Club to work, depending on the teacher's level, because you'll find different teachers have different levels of comfort in letting the kids play. And you want to just work with them and keep expanding it so that you can have Play Club in the ideal that Play Club was originally created, from the theme and the core of letting the kids play, letting the kids go back and forth. And they do funny things like, okay, I'll finish up soon because I get excited. I don't want to keep talking. I can't wait to hear Courtney's story. But like yesterday, my son, his backpack is so heavy. He brings his lunchbox, his big water bottle, his, reusable snack, all like the ice packs. So yesterday, one of the games that they played in Play Club was who can pick up his backpack. The kids went around in a circle and were trying to figure out who could pick it up. And I'm just like, see, you don't even need anything. And I get so excited about it. That's why I'm on this mission to bring play to people all around the world of all ages, not just kids, because I've firsthand witnessed the difference that play makes in your life and your vibrancy, your authenticity, your ability to learn and grow. And so again, I'm so excited to pass it over to Courtney. I'm happy to answer questions and connect with anybody, but it's just sitting in Play Club is a complete joy in my day. And I'm just so thankful that you guys are all here taking time and effort to bring this to your children and to the world. So thank you.
Wow, thank you. I wish you could prove that you were a little excited about this because we really don't believe it, but maybe you'll develop some enthusiasm as the days go by. Let's hope. I have a lot of questions for you, but I want to hear from Courtney. Courtney, first of all, I'd like you to roll back a second. You said you grew up, you're where your parents grew up. Did you grow up there too?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so let's do a before and after, their youth, your youth, and your kids' youth.
Yeah, so I grew up in the town I live in when we're a little bit outside the city in suburban heaven. And it's funny, I live in a different neighborhood, but still very similar to the neighborhood I grew up in, where it's all cul-de-sacs and dead ends. We're on a little bit of a horseshoe, but I couldn't be set up better for outdoor play, free range. We're in a very safe community, lots of families, and my childhood was awesome. We would get off the bus. There was one bus stop for the whole neighborhood. We'd all come piling out, and the neighborhood dog, little golden retriever Tasha, was there waiting for us. And she walked all of us home to drop off our backpacks and holler in "I'm home, Mom." And then we'd gather outside and we would bounce around and we'd play games. And I was not always the most social. So sometimes I grabbed my book and I climbed my tree and I sat up there, and we all just were, and we didn't get along every moment. My brother and sister certainly were not my favorite people, but we had a childhood. It was wonderful. And then I did move away for a short while, and my firstborn, he and I were just the two of us for a long time. And then I decided that we needed to come back to this area because of the school district, and specifically the school that I went to for elementary, which for us is kindergarten through 6th grade, is the same elementary school that my parents went to. And it's a project-based curriculum. So to me, it really lends itself to critical thinking, risk-taking, all of that. And I knew I wanted that for my son. I had seen enough of the districts that we were near to know that critical thinking wasn't a guarantee with just anywhere. So we moved back so he could go to that school. And I met my current partner and his daughter, who was also going into kindergarten at the school my children are at. And we became a blended family, and we have an almost 4-year-old now as well. So we have a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, and 11-year-old all together in this ideal neighborhood. And shortly after our little one was born was when COVID hit. And so we were home all the time. And we were outside all the time because we could be in our neighborhood, and we got to know our neighbors, and our kids got to play together from safe distances when that was important. And then COVID started being a little less impactful on our day to day. And we lost those connections. People aren't outside anymore because they've gotten busy again. So that was a really big change for our home life. I wound up changing jobs. I had been in orthopedics before COVID and decided to shift gears, be a little more family centered. And I started working as a classroom assistant in a different elementary school in our district. And my eyes were really open to how little play was happening during the school day. We're in a very academic heavy district, really big expectations. And there needed to be opportunity for more and for our children to have chances to connect that weren't always in structured activities and weren't always with just their same peer group. So one opportunity that I took advantage of is that our school and many in our district before COVID did what we called a before school running club. So one day a week, kids could get dropped off or parents could stay, and the children do laps around our recess area. And parent volunteers would be there to track laps, give out little tokens, and just be the adults in charge. So when there was a push for that to come back last year, I said, oh, I can volunteer. I have that time. And it was my new favorite thing. It was so great to see all of these kids show up, and a lot of parents would hang out, and those community connections were really forming again. We were all desperate for that. So I had so much fun with that. We did it all last spring, and then we started right off at the beginning of this school year. And in that time is when I became introduced to the Let Grow Foundation and all of these thoughts and goals in my head. So when the weather started turning for us here in New England, I said, oh, people aren't going to be running all winter long. Well, why don't I do play club? I'll just do play club when we can't be running. So I talked to our principal, who I have, like Laura was speaking to, those relationships. I've had a relationship with him because we've been around so long. And I said, what if I do, since we can't do, we call it milers, since we can't do milers in the winter, what if I do play club? Is there a spot inside that we could do that? And he gave me the cafeteria, and it's been fantastic. So once a week, we have about 35 minutes before school that kids can be dropped off, or again, parents and siblings are welcome to come too. And I just bring a couple things from home, some games, some crafts, my Bluetooth speaker. And we have a very consistent group of kids who come every week, everything from kindergarten through 6th grade. And it's my favorite time of the week. I have to remember to bring my book every week because I have nothing to do, because they're just playing and they're doing lots of different things. My favorite is there's a group of girls who every week are practicing Cotton Eye Joe. And that's what they do. They ask me to play Cotton Eye Joe on my speaker, and we have our cafeteria is also the auditorium. So we have a stage, and they get right up on that stage and perform. And it's so fun. And the feedback has been wonderful. And I look forward to the spring when we can get the running club up again and maybe make another day of the week that's play club. And at that point, maybe outdoors, because we can be. So, I mean, I'll also admit I'm super intimidated by Laura. Don't tell her. But like, you don't have to be anybody but a mom, a member of a community. You don't have to be a mom, I guess, to instill these things and, talk to people and help out and make these changes and advocate for childhood.
Sorry, I realized I'm mute. Wow. Yet more inspiration. It's interesting to me that you got these things going in the real world, and they're sort of different from the way I've imagined them, or I've seen them at other schools. One's in a classroom, one's before school in a cafeteria. Do you think there's a way to expand these? I mean, you're both sort of thinking that way. You're thinking about maybe 2 days a week of outdoor stuff. Courtney and Laura, I know you're thinking about those kids in the other classrooms are like, hey, that looks good. Can we do? What would be the next step if you did want to make it either get more kids involved or more teachers or more days or more times? Either of you.
Yeah, I know that there's a big push definitely at our school, and I'm sure at other schools in my district, for after school time. That's something I haven't taken on because that doesn't work into my family's life. And that's where these connections get important and finding other parents who are willing to donate the time from their schedule just to be there and be the adult in charge. So it really, I think it all just takes conversation and outreach.
Mm-hmm. What are you thinking, Laura, with those other classrooms, those other kids?
Yeah, I think it's the having other parents that are on your team is a huge thing in terms of expansion. Even for me, and when I was starting, I was like, I have 2 kids. What if they get sick? I can't solely be responsible. That was a stopper for me for a while. I was like, oh, I can't, because ideally in a perfect world, I want the teachers to do it or just like stay after for a recess. But at the same time, I was happy to do it myself. And once I started it, I was even more happy because it's so fun. Like you said, Courtney, like you just sit there and you're like, I want to talk to the kids, but I'm like, no, this is their time. And so actually I end up helping the teacher, which is pretty cool. But I think it will be working with the teachers. I think that it's naturally grows, like you said, Courtney, because of the interest. The kids hear about it. The kids see what we're doing. Oh, I want to do that. I want to do that too. And then their parents can help out as well. And, for us, like our classrooms, they're kind of like hotel rooms. There's like a door that 2 rooms can be joined. So we were just talking about how we can expand into the next classroom yesterday.
White Lotus. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then the teacher's like, well, how can that work? I'm like, well, the kids they can choose which room they want. Like,
Imagine that.
Organize it. And so I think it's just, being in communication, we're talking to other people, see who's on. And as you're sharing it, your natural enthusiasm will spill over into other people and they'll want to come on board. So hopefully you'll continue to attract the right people that you want. And also the school will notice. They notice the difference it makes.
I was going to say that too. I think that doing it inside the school or on the school grounds is so crucial. One thing that I've done is invited our principal and our assistant principal to come hang out at Play Club for a little while and see these children in all these grades hang out and not have behavior problems and not have adult intervention, and that they can just be. And I think that's really powerful. And I think it adds to the administration then being in your corner and helping you with that outreach of, are there parents who are interested in doing this on another day of the week or after school as opposed to before school? And I think Play Club speaks for itself.
I wanted to jump in here because I think that both of you guys started from a place of relationship, and that you already had the ability to go in and talk to teachers or principals. And I think sometimes, that's tough for parents, right? A lot of the parents that end up making appointments with me to talk about how do I do this in Play Club aren't sure really where to start. And I think it really depends on, you have to look at what your position is within that community. If you're a new parent and you've got, you don't really have a relationship with teachers yet, probably you should start with talking to your child's teacher individually. I would say that, people, it's great. Send them the implementation guide. I've heard people say, oh, I sent my principal the implementation guide for how to do a Play Club. I'm like, that's great. But understanding, as Laura, I think especially had said, people are really busy. Teachers and principals are really busy, and everybody wants what's best for your kids. Sometimes we might not be on the same wavelength as to what exactly that answer is. And there's only so many hours in a day, so on and so forth. But I think it's important to know that rather than, just kind of throwing something at a teacher or a principal and say, hey, I think this is important. Can we do this? You need to make sure that what you're doing is not putting their wall up. So when we talk about creating that relationship, once you've established a relationship with your child's teacher, you can be having some of these conversations about play. You think you'll find, I've never met a teacher who said kids don't need to play. First of all, I'll tell you that I've never. But I think it's a matter of making sure that when you present something, you come as it's a gift, it's a suggestion, it's a recommendation. And the fact that both Laura and Courtney walked into it with the willingness to make it happen, which is different than calling up your principal saying, my kid's not getting enough play. I need you to change recess. Right? Because then that's kind of, people get their backs up. So I want to make sure everybody also knows that you are welcome to put your hand up and ask questions of Laura and Courtney. I realize we didn't necessarily do a good job of a background on what exactly Play Club is. We walked into this assuming all of you know exactly what Play Club is. Probably not a good necessarily the right place to start. So Lenora, I'm going to pass it back to you because I'm losing my voice, but I'd also love you to just give an overview on what is Play Club, because Laura mentioned the pledge and the rules.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great idea. Play Club is our attempt to give kids back what Laura and Courtney were talking about at the beginning, which is a chance to have fun as kids with different age children, making up your games, having quarrels, deciding to climb a tree or not, deciding to make up a game or not, switching your allegiances, basically all the elements that used to be part of, I would say, a rather normal childhood that have sort of evaporated with organized activities, extra homework, and a lot of supervision. And so sometimes I try to describe the Play Club as, you know how there's like a wildlife preserve? We want to keep the elephants living as if they were elephants and the tigers living that way. And so we carve out a space for them. And this is a child life preserve. This is a chance for kids to have basically what we had. And not just because it's fun. I mean, actually, yes, just because it's fun. But in fact, there are so many things that kids learn through play that are really hard to learn otherwise. And actually, I'll turn this back to Laura and Courtney for a second to talk about what have you seen in the Play Club that kids are getting that they wouldn't necessarily get from a lesson or from an adult running an activity versus them just playing. What lessons have you seen them learn?
Choice.
Like what?
I would say is the first thing, is that they can choose what they're doing and for what length of time. That if they want to sit down and play a board game with a friend, they can. If they want to pull out of that at any time, they can. If they want to dance on stage, they can. And
Right.
It's all choice within that. And I think too, because our Play Club is before school, since that's what worked out for us, I also have gotten feedback that, like, because it happens to be on Tuesdays, and Tuesdays are the best days, is what I hear.
Who says that?
Teachers, parents, certainly the children. And we in our district talk a lot about filling your cup and filling other people's buckets and that kind of thing. And you literally can see their buckets getting filled. They're starting their day with choice and autonomy and relationships, and that's setting their tone. And that's very different than coming in and sitting down at a table seat that's assigned to them and being started off with a lesson that they have to do for whatever amount of time is allotted to it.
Right. So you're bringing back self-direction, autonomy, friendship, making friends, learning how to get along. And what else have you seen, Laura?
Yeah, I was going to add to that. On the, like, right from the choice, I've been noticing confidence. You have these opportunities to talk to different kids of different ages, girls and boys. I could see them sometimes looking over like, ooh, I want to go play with him. Ooh, and then watching them step out and go and play with them and see how they maneuver. And so that gives them these, safe environments to make their choices and then to gain that confidence and that expression, the full expression of themselves, it's just so lovely. And then there's, laughter, like so much laughter, they're just laughing and being silly. And, like you said, letting them just do whatever they want. Kids are so structured. It's amazing. Like, I think it's okay to plan structured, unstructured time, because if we don't actually plan for it, you'll just get busy. That's how we are as adults, right? If we don't make space for our own play, hint, hint, right? If we don't do that, like, we can get full of it too. So, we can have those choices. But when we show it to our kids, that they can choose, then they're going to have that power as they become middle schoolers and teenagers and adults. And, so it's.
Right. Yeah, so much that just seems like normal life and relationships going. I'm going to finish just describing Play Club for a second. Then I want to go back to the idea of the behaviors of kids and sort of what the principals and other teachers and other adults have seen with kids playing that they might not have recognized kids were capable of. But so at Play Club, it can, as you've heard, it can be before school or after school. It can be indoors or outdoors. It can be with 35 kids or 300 kids. The whole idea is to have some time set aside for unstructured and not quite unsupervised play, but the adults that are there, you've heard these ladies talking about, they stand back, they read their books, they try not to jump in and solve the arguments or organize the games or even make a great suggestion, because free play until very recently was free play. It was kids figuring out what to do and arguing over the rules and deciding to change the rules if it got boring. And there's so much that our theory, and we get a lot of this from Dr. Peter Gray, who's one of the founders of Let Grow, and he wrote the book Free to Learn. Our theory is that Mother Nature put the play drive into kids because on the way to getting to the fun of having the game, playing the tag, or organizing the circle game, whatever it is, you have to go through so many evolutionarily important lessons, like how to get along, how to get people on your side, how to read people if they're bored, how to deal with the jerk, how to deal with the 3-year-old who's tagging along, and you're going to have to go home unless you figure out something fun for them to do, or your mom's going to yell at you. And so what looks like, we think of child's play as just play, but getting to the fun is a whole lot of these social emotional skills that we're very worried that kids are not having today. And as Peter Gray likes to point out, the opposite of depression is the opposite of joy and health is the depression of no play. Play is really what gives life meaning and gives children friends. And especially if your kid doesn't have friends in his grade or her grade, maybe somebody a little older is going to take a shine to them, or maybe they can play with the kids who are a little younger. So when the kid comes to school every day, instead of feeling like a loser, everyone's yelling, "Hi, Hector," because Hector gave everybody a piggyback ride yesterday, all the younger kids. So we feel like Play Club is a way to give kids back some fun, but also give back a very fundamental part of childhood that we accidentally removed, which is all the lessons in being a human that you get from free play. That's why, one morning a week and one afternoon a week and 35 kids here. I mean, we're so desperate to have other people recognize what, Courtney and Laura have recognized, which is that this is not just fun. This is a significant activity that should spread. So that's what Play Club is. And if you download our implementation guide, it explains how to get one started. It explains the role of the adult is more like a lifeguard. And the little pledge that we ask to sign, there's a pledge for kids that says, "I will not deliberately hurt somebody, and I will not leave without telling somebody." And the pledge for the parents says, my favorite thing, "I recognize my child will not be happy every single second of Play Club." So tell me why you like that pledge, Laura. I mean, it's my favorite thing, but you tell me.
Right. Well, it empowers the kids. And more importantly, because the kids don't really need to be empowered, right? It empowers the parents. So the parents can say, yes, this is important. Yes, it's okay if they don't get along all the time. I noticed when I was leading the Play Club at the park, parents would almost be like, if their kid was doing something wrong, wrong, quote unquote, they would also like, "Oh, you can't do that." But it's okay. And that's what we need to let them do. Right. So I think it just makes it clear and it sets the intention, which I'm always really big about, setting the intention of what it is that you're doing.
And to add to that, sorry to jump in. I think it's also done in such a clever way. It's a pledge. It's a promise. It's not rules to adhere to. You're not being told to do this. Like Laura said, you're being empowered. So whether you're a kid or a parent, this is your pledge. This is your promise. It's from you. It's not being put on you from authority.
Can I share a question, Lenore?
Oh, we got a question. Yeah.
Yeah. Shantala typed out, she says she'd like to start a before school free playground session led by parent volunteers, but she's wondering if there is a parent to kid ratio you recommend. How many lifeguards?
I'm turning it over to the experts who have started their own. Let's hear.
I'll speak to it because ours is before school, and even though our running club is a little bit more structured than free play, it's still pretty loose. And we've pretty much gone with 2 set parents when it's outdoors, who are always there. And that makes it easy. We do have to check kids in and make sure that the permission slip has been signed just for legal purposes. Mm-hmm. So that helps to have one person who can be on that side of things. And then because when we're doing running club, we're counting laps. For the indoor play club, it's just me. I have a couple parents, including one who's a teacher at our school, on backup duty. Like Laura said, it's a little intimidating to be the only person. You know, my children have doctor's appointments or get sick, or myself get sick. So I have people on call. But I think it's really what you're comfortable with and what works for the amount of children you have to show up, what works for a potential bathroom situation. Are you able to just send kids off to use the bathroom? Does somebody need to accompany them? So I don't think there's a magic number. I think that it's about your comfort, and start with what works and let it evolve.
Yeah. And again, you can always start at small and you can always add on. Trust me, you'll have no problem finding more kids who will want to join you. And also check with your school, because different schools might have different numbers that they want to have, depending on what they might even have, like we have what they call yard aides who come out and help. So you might be able to work with them as well. I do want to add one thing good for my school is that we actually do have before school play club. We've always had 20 minutes before school starts that the kids can come and play. So that's why I naturally do mine after school. And I can say that it really helps, like Courtney says, they can run around. It also helps for tardiness, right? The kids want to show up early, so they're going to get there. Like we get there early so that my kids, they're like, we got to go, Mom. I don't want to have them miss their early play, so you can just talk to your school as well.
Wow. Can you tell me what happened when you've had other people come in and see it? Like, I think, Courtney, you mentioned having the principal or the assistant principal come in. What do they see and what surprises them?
The peace. I think that is the biggest surprise, is that it's calm. And that doesn't mean it's quiet. That doesn't mean it's not joyful, but it's not chaos. It's not loud, busy in that overwhelming sense. It's very peaceful in all these different moving parts. And we're definitely a school district right now with a big change since the pandemic and how the children are, again, being perceived in their behavior and things like that. So some of the days feel very long on the inside, and that calm in the excitement, I think, is the biggest difference. There's nothing for the kids to push back on because they're choosing and they're engaging and they're learning.
Do you think of it as something that's particularly important post-pandemic, or just always important?
Always. I think it's different right now, but always.
Mm-hmm. What do you think it's giving them that is significant, considering what everybody's just been through and what you're talking about, the adults recognizing in the kids? It sounds like, I'm not sure if kids are having more fights or if they're more passive, or what the behavior change has been since COVID.
I think it gives the kids a break from the fear of all the adults around them, the fear of what we've all just gone through. And we haven't had a lot of grace in our district given to the developmental changes from the pandemic. All the academic expectations are the same, even though these are elementary students who missed out on, multiple years of typical schooling. And that's a hard way to feel every day as an adult or a child, of just expectations being over your head. And that can come out in ways that it's less than desirable for the adults around you. So to have this time, and to me, it's really important that these children have the time in their school building to feel happy and secure and safe and confident. Like Laura was saying, they're not disappointing anybody because the expectations are just to be themselves.
Not disappointing anybody is so interesting. Wow. And Laura, I saw you. Your chest.
Right. That space in the school, because I hadn't put that connection together. Like they can feel that, they can feel so good at school, and they can associate these positive feelings with school, especially for any kids who felt behind, who felt, stuck, who were struggling, who have all these pressures. Like I was going to say, my answer to that was going to be space and freedom. It's like we lift the lid and suddenly they're in charge, and they can see that they have the power to be in charge of parts of their own life and ultimately be their own person, and so I think it's really fun for that. And in terms of, visitors coming through, other teachers will often come through and they will say to the teacher, "Oh, you were brave doing this." And then she's like, "But look." And then other teachers look around and they're like, "Wow." And, I've got feedback such as, I would never expected they would go for that, or which I found fascinating that, the teachers might have an expectation of what they think the kids would or wouldn't be doing. And they could see the kids in a new light, which again is really cool for me to be expanding teachers' view of that, and just to be having these little plugs of the importance of play for, not just the students, but also for themselves as teachers and outside of the walls of the school, just as a human being, And one more thing was the vice principal has been coming through, and I've seen her at when I was leading Global School Play, she comes out and she plays with the kids, which I think is just beautiful, right? So it's just kind of, planting these little seeds and watching it and, grow. So there it is. It's the Let Grow right there.
Yeah. No, it's deliberately chosen name. Can you tell me one thing that they thought that the kids wouldn't go for? Are you talking about oh, that kid is so uninterested in math. Why is he playing, hopscotch or something like that?
Example that she was telling me. I'm trying to think of it. Well, okay, so it was like these bowling pins. So there were these bowling pins that were set up, and for some reason, apparently she must have thought that they wouldn't do something different with them. Like they ended up building this really cool course that they had to it's just kind of funny, right? Take this little ball and push it through this bowling pin course. And I don't know, just because kids don't necessarily have that space in the academic day to have this freedom and creative approach. So I just love, I just found it interesting.
Yeah. So you're saying that they actually saw the kids in another light, which was being more creative and I guess maybe more patient. Bowling pins seem like they would fall down and you'd have to do stuff. So it's such a giant part of life. And it's so strange to me that there's so little of it in children's lives and so little of it that we see. And no wonder you're joyful when you're watching them. It's like seeing birds fly instead of being, birds in a cage or whatever. So, this is supposed to be practical advice. What else can you tell us that would be, that gets people on board?
Well, I can answer that too, but I think we have a question as well about.
Oh, a real question. Go ahead.
So I wanted to make sure to touch on that. Thank you guys for your questions. We love helping, bring these questions in. So for 0 to 3s and 3 to 5. So I feel like definitely the younger, the 0 to 3, they don't have to make the pledge themselves, but I'm all for making the pledge for parents, and especially for parents of young children, feeling like it's okay for your kids to have a little extra leeway in their development, right? Especially in terms of rough play and, allowing that to not be wrong. If the kid has to learn through that, they actually learn through knocking another kid down or getting knocked down. And if we step back for a little bit, don't do that, and we don't step in, they can learn through it quicker. So I love that, even more so almost for the younger ages, because let's just put it in early and then we have less to, it'll make it hopefully be smoother.
I'd add to the lower ages too, that, obviously there's a lot of study about the different developmental stages, and, children don't automatically know how to share. And that's kind of a pretty important skill to have when you're talking about playing together. But I think that it's really more crucial that parents understand the value of the play, because when you're talking to parents who are new parents with their kids, they all know how to let them walk. Every one of us has learned how to walk. And we did it because we tried it and we fell down, and we tried it and we fell down. And as a parent, you don't jump in and go, oh no, you fell. And then you set them down and say, don't move again, because it's scary. You might fall again. No, you encourage them to get up and toddle around and cruise and all of that. So I think it's important that parents recognize that all of the things that children are doing when they're falling down, when they're creating something different out of bowling pins, that all of that is learning. And that's really the real key, is that learning is happening all the time. And that by sticking them in boxes or saying you can only play with this toy this way for this amount of time, you're stifling that creativity and you're stifling those opportunities for them to learn something that is in the moment for themselves.
Right. Do we think that there's a way to get more people to see your clubs and spread it to other schools? I mean, our whole goal is everybody to recognize what you guys are recognizing, especially when you're just watching and going, oh my God, look how fun, look how quiet, look how calm, look how loud and yet not crazy mean. How do we get other people to see this?
I think starting, as obviously both Laura and I have it started, and then just continuing to plant those seeds and make those relationships. My kids' elementary school is one of 6 that we have in our district. So my goal over the next couple of weeks is to reach out to the PTOs at all the other schools, now that we've been doing our play club for enough time where I can say it's working. It's a great model. Nobody has gotten in trouble. Nobody has gotten hurt. Look at all these wonderful things. And to let them know what we're doing, and they can put out feelers to see if they have parent volunteers. All the PTOs obviously are made up of parents who want to do it. And another thing that I have on my calendar is to meet with my town rec department when we're a little bit closer to spring because of our weather challenges. And we plan to start a town play club, and just a time that's available so that parents and families know they can show up and they'll have a community. We need our villages back. And sometimes it's just about, like Laura said, making that space and that time.
Would it be something where parents would be able to leave? Do you have any idea?
Yep.
Wow. Who wouldn't want that? You're kidding. Goodbye. See you on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Free babysitting is always appealing, isn't it?
Free. Yes. And Laura, how about you? Any other ideas for how to get the idea spreading to other schools or possibly to Parks and Rec?
To your friends, to your community, right? Like I tell my friends, okay, at the other schools, and get them interested, have them come be a part of it. And I mine is getting complicated because I'm thinking of all the other events I'm doing with my book. So it's just, all being part of the community, sharing what you're up to, making it easy on other people to replicate it. So the less, if they're interested in it, the less they have to do to make it happen, the better chance it's going to be, right? I have a lot of friends who are interested, but they're like those super volunteer moms who are like, okay, I already have 14. So it's like finding the right people and just sharing about what you're doing, right? Like on my Instagram, I'll share about the different events I'm doing, and I'm always going to be, upbeat about the school. Like I'm not going, I like to focus on, what we have that's working, and, just invite. It's an invitation, like you said earlier, Andrea. It's like you want to make an invitation. You're not saying, hey, you have to do this, school. Hey, have you ever considered this? What would you think about that?
Good point. Yeah.
Your school might be interested. Can I come and talk to them? So like I have meetings with a couple other schools to talk about, implementing their own, because Courtney and I, we can't lead everyone. You guys, we can't everyone listening here today, we can't lead all the play clubs. And so it's just, we can start them, and then we can help, other leaders come in, or other parents, or other volunteers, or, other teachers to step into it. And it will keep continuing to grow, especially when they see it. And the other thing I want to make sure, you guys probably all know about it, but the research that was done for Kevin's Play Club is amazing. And so I share that specifically. I share that every time with the principal, because that's hard, fast science. And I'm fingers crossed. My goal is to get a research project for our school play club and just put more of that out there for people to see, because some people want the proof, they want the research, they want the science. And, I want them to have the science and the experience.
Let me
Great
jump
point.
in there too, because you mentioned Kevin, and maybe everybody on here doesn't know who Kevin is.
Yes.
Kevin
Imagine
Steinhardt is
that.
kind of our rock star teacher who started Play Club himself at his school, volunteering his own time. I think he's going into year 5, maybe 4 or 5.
5, yeah. It was before COVID,
built it from him as the only volunteer to 13 teachers who volunteer their time. And having been an elementary school teacher, getting a teacher to volunteer their time, considering they have so much else to do, is pretty amazing. It just goes to show you how wonderful the experience is. I will make sure that we put some information about that webinar. Kevin did a wonderful webinar with us about that was more focused on teachers and educators starting play clubs, which kind of is where this came from. And so I'll make sure we share some of that information with you as well. And specifically, there was a grad student who did a study at his school on some of the benefits of Play Club. And I'll make sure we share that with you as well. Because yes, you're right, Laura, the administrators have a lot on their shoulders, and being able to show them statistics, for instance, a really powerful one is principal referrals went down like 50% in the first year they were doing it. Well, if I'm a principal and I have fewer kids getting sent to the office, that is a win. So we're coming up, we got a last few minutes, and I'm curious if anybody has any other questions. Can tell we've got a lot of parents on the call because we've had them flitting off as they go pick up children and things like that. But any last questions for Laura or Courtney?
I have one.
Raise your hand now or forever hold.
Right. If not, Lenore will jump in again, which is, do you have videos? Do you have something like that? If you're not living down the street from you guys, Courtney, Laura, where people can actually see what this looks like, and seeing is believing?
That's a great question. I don't have that as of yet. We have policies in our school not to share faces of students in any kind of photos or videos. I often, if I weren't using my phone to play music for these children, I've often thought of what great shots I could get of the backs of them.
We would take them. That'd be great.
Yeah, so certainly happy to make that happen. Because I think, I had a little bit of a tricky moment when the principal first said cafeteria. I'm like, ooh, what will this look like that isn't super structured? And it looks great. So happy to get that out there.
Wonderful. And Laura, documentary footage.
Along those same lines, I'm always taking like these close-up pictures where I try not to get anyone's faces or any things that say what the school, like anything like that. But I do have some footage, and I'm a little backlogged in what I'm sharing, and so I'll be posting it. But you can see some footage from especially the Global School Play Day, because we just had that recently, of all these cool different things the kids did with the same materials across ages. And I just enjoy making footage like that to inspiring play. So I'll be sharing more of that on my Instagram.
Great.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're closing down here at this point. Everybody, thank you for joining us. I've got a number of things. I'm finishing up this little email as we were talking to make sure that we include a link to the other webinar we mentioned, as well as the research article that came out that was done at Kevin's school. And as always, you're welcome to get in touch with us. Happy to talk with you at any time. Happy to have Laura and Courtney talk with you. They're being very generous, and we'll be including their information so that you can reach out to them. Really does, as you said, Courtney, it takes a village, and we all need to be helping each other do these things. And we very much appreciate at Let Grow the work that you all are doing in helping to spread this and make this happen across the country. So thanks very much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.